Terry Gilliam's graphic work for Monty Python would have been a whole career for a normal man. But it was just the beginning for a film director who would have changed the face of the cinema if he had made nothing else except Brazil. He has the kind of creative energy that's hard to keep on the couch.
Let's start the way you might and go backwards. What's happening? Is it the ancient Spanish knight and his...
Well, he's actually turning up in a funny form in Berlin this coming week. This
is Don Quixote. Huh?
This is Don Quixote.
I thought I was joking. You're actually working on the thing. It's happening.
No, this is what happened a year and a half ago. We spent 2 years getting this thing together. We raised $32 million just out of Europe. No American money, no American involvement. This was an important thing. Johnny Depp, Jean Rochefort, the man who killed Don Quixote. And after these 2 years, we started shooting. 5 days into the shoot, Don Quixote developed a prostate infection. A very bad thing for a man on a horse.
I think I did hear about that.
And
yeah.
so
was the prostate the thing? That was the thing that caught my attention. Yeah.
and it was over. It was over.
Yeah.
And documentary's been made about it. Luckily, I had a couple guys with digital cameras like this.
That's why they have insurance of actors, isn't it? Yeah.
But the insurance company, I think, was a bit silly. They ended up spending $12 million for nothing.
So you actually shot the demise of the movies?
Well, that's what the guys with the digital cameras did, and then they put it together, and it's now a film in the Berlin Film Festival. So I've got to go there in a couple of days, and I don't know what I'm promoting exactly. My failures.
Well, you'll probably start again. You always have.
Yeah, well, it's a good promo for the film for anybody that wants to give us money for the resuscitation of it.
Well, you've never given up yet, and
I'm thinking of it though. Man.
Well, you always do. You're always getting into circumstances where, now that we've started from the end, we should go back to the beginning. But one of the themes as I try and relate your life to your work, is that you take on these projects that they're just huge, and money really, really matters.
Yeah.
And sometimes it'll crush you, like Baron Munchausen.
Yeah. The problem is its ideas are really hard to finance. It's really what I discover about the stuff, because, I mean, even in a project I'm working on now, which I don't want to talk about, but it's ideas, and it scares him. If I could take all the ideas out and just have this simplistic plot, no problem.
But you're not like that. You never have done anything simple. That's the opposite of a criticism, because you have a marvelous graphic skill, and theoretically with a piece of paper and a pencil you're in business for 4 pence.
Yeah.
But your next step is $400 million.
Yes.
And that's nothing.
I was really smart once upon a time when nobody would give me a job in movies and things. Then I just had the paper and the pencil. Now they've given me jobs. They've kind of made enough successful movies that they keep offering me things. So I get lured into these projects, and then my imagination starts going. And it always grows.
But really you get offered the projects because you're fundamentally an economical director who gets it done on time.
Well, that's the reality of it. That isn't what the legend says.
No, but the legend you have managed to outlive, because that legend can catch you up. What did it catch you up on? Was it Munchausen?
Munchausen, yeah, because we had a budget of 23.5, and it just went. I mean, it was the great thing about that project was we had raised 23.5, and the first accountant came in and said it's going to cost 60. He was fired. The producer fired him. Got another one. He said it's going to cost, I think, 40. He was fired. Got it down to 30. He was gone. The fourth accountant said 23.5. He got the job, and off we went sailing. And of course, and I think it probably ended, I don't know. I think it might have cost 40 in the end. I'm not sure. I have no idea.
I watched my friend Beresford's film King David, and I saw battle scenes in which people charged towards each other and then nothing happened, or the same army charged in two directions, and I immediately clicked and said, "You've been filming in Italy." It was Italy that did it. Because in Italy the money runs out faster than anywhere.
But it's so seductive, you know. It was actually the last night of Munchausen where I left Rome. I had dinner with Fellini, and this is my hero. And I remember walking to the restaurant and thinking, I've been raped. This country raped me. And I got there and I said, you made your film. Yeah. And I just felt I had bent over and taken it. And I said, but to be honest, it was actually really enjoyable, most of it.
I think you're so like him in many ways. One thing, you've both got how can I put this where it sounds polite? It doesn't sound polite, but you've got essentially comic book mentality. Yeah. Is that Fellini comes out of Little Nemo and stuff like that. These big dreams. Yeah. They're comic book dreams, aren't they?
Well, he began as a cartoonist as well.
Yeah, Fumetti and all that stuff. Yeah.
And once you've got that, I think that's the thing, is because you can draw it, you can imagine it, and then you can make images, and then you move into movies. And I don't know which came first, whether I wanted to be a cartoonist because of movies or because of cartoons. I've never known, but the freedom of cartooning is the thing that I really miss, because I can put those ideas in,
I'm just interested in the connection between practical ability and fantasy. There are fantasies you can't realize unless you have practical ability. There are things you have to know. There are things you know, for example, like a man in a Jabberwocky costume. The legs look right, but not if he stands in the ordinary way, right? If you put a man in a costume, if as an animal, the knees are in the wrong place, right? How do you solve that?
Well, you turn him backwards.
You turn him backwards.
But it's all lateral thinking.
But you were the first to think of that.
I know, because there were all those films being made at the time about Journey to the Center of the Earth with Doug McClure, and they were all being done up at Pinewood. And they were all these great rubber beasts that were great, except the knees went the wrong way. Yeah. So I became obsessed with that.
When I read that you had actually thought of turning the man backwards, I checked it out, and yes, there you went. I could see it, but I never figured it out myself, that there was a guy inside the costume. I thought the whole thing was an animatronic.
But isn't that weird, though? It's something as simple as we all sort of subconsciously are watching the knees of things or legs the way they work.
But you save millions of dollars right there, because nowadays that's the kind of problem a studio would tend to try and solve with electronics.
Everything is all put later, is what they try to do. Electronics or CGI work. I just did a commercial, which I won't mention the client, because I'll be banned from all sorts
How
of
fascinating. What can I do to get you to mention it?
Eco-thinking people. Anyway, but it did keep little Indonesian kids working. That's the important thing. Keep those kids working.
And it kept them smoking. That's the important thing.
Anyway, but everything in a commercial now is done. You do it all in post. So all the problems you push to post. And it's a very sloppy world. I hated working on this thing because, again, there was no discipline. And nobody would make decisions at the point. When we began doing Python albums, I remember we were in, Andre Jacquemin is the man who's always done our albums, and we were in his garden shed, and he had a 2-track, I guess it was a 4-track recorder, and my 2-track recorder, and that's how we did the first albums like that. And then eventually we get to 36-track, and well, the discipline helps because we don't keep putting off the decision making.
But it's quite often the death of art when you can do anything and don't have to think initially. Didn't really get into that situation until now, and I don't think it'll ever threaten you. But I think Brazil is a great movie, and Brazil would not have, I think, the density and texture it's got if you could have done everything electronically. You create this wonderful ambiance for it, this look.
Yeah.
And you had to build it. I mean, all the ducting and everything is actually, it's real, isn't it?
And I don't know what it is, but subconsciously I remember when Jurassic Park came out the first time, the dinosaurs were just incredible. But now you look at it, and it looks like CGI work.
It was Sam Neill that I'm worried about. Is he there?
But I just think there's a weird subconscious thing. We get used to what computers do. We can see it, but reality is always surprising because you can never quite predict everything in reality. So to me, I still like doing it, hands-on.
I love it when I know it must be a set, and yet it's a new world. I love that. And Brazil, I think, is, if you'll allow me to praise you to your face, it's a political movie on the scale of the Battle of Algiers. It's a true political movie.
I was just in the Czech Republic, and they think it's come true now. It's about now.
Yeah.
It was about then, but people didn't know it was about then. Now it's about now, and they recognize it. I'll tell you how weird it really gets weird, because the whole idea, are there terrorists or are they just the system going wrong and things blowing up? Yeah. That's what's going on. The most shocking thing that came out of Brazil for me is when I discovered Timothy McVeigh, who blew up the Oklahoma thing. Yeah. His nicknames were Timothy Tuttle and Timothy Buttle. And this is central to Brazil. It turns out it's one of the favorite films of the far right in America, which is one of the things that makes me utterly crazy, because my intentions are just the opposite. Yeah. But it's an anti-authoritarian film, and it's against the state, and that's what the far right in America is out.
I suppose you can't imagine people on the far right wanting to be the Michael Palin character in the movie.
Yeah,
there's some interesting, I won't call it a quarrel, it's the wrong thing, but there was a division of opinion that grew up between you and Stoppard. Stoppard wrote the first version of the screenplay, right? And Stoppard wanted the torturer to have a torturous personality, to be evil. And I think your point was that, no, he should be as normal as possible, which is the way you've done it.
I think that it was one of the things that we disagreed about, because Tom did some amazing stuff there, but this was one area I felt, it's signaling everything. And it's and the important thing is that he was a real normal guy with wife, family, responsibilities, but he had a job to do.
Yes.
And what was interesting is the one scene that we shot a second time in the film, because it's a scene with Mike when Jonathan Pryce walks into his office and discovers that the torturer is Mike Palin. And the scene is identical as far as dialogue went, but it didn't quite work. And then I realized I got to show rather than imply. And so I brought my daughter in to play the little girl. So Mike is playing with her with blocks and toys while he's talking about the torture. And suddenly it just went zzz.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it fizzed. That the whole theme starts to fizz when you realize that the perfectly ordinary secretary of Palin, who's not even glamorous, is doing a faithful transcription of what's going on in the room. And one of the things you're looking at is no, 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 no. Is it no, no, no?
It's, no, please, oh God, no, please. And she's just typing
She's
away.
just typing.
And she's talking very
But
nice.
you can't hear that. You can only see what she's typing, right?
But
So it took me a while to catch on, which is the idea, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And none of it's affecting her.
No,
That's the other thing. It's the two things. She's the sweetest little
which
lady
is
in the world.
psychologically true, because when the smoke finally cleared from Germany in 1945, it was full of people who had no idea that there was a moral implication to what they were doing.
But this is what we keep trying to forget. I mean, they try to turn Nazis into Darth Vader. They weren't Darth Vader. They were you and me.
Yeah.
That's the
Well,
problem.
it's me that I'm worried. I was once stopped in my tracks by a dear friend who, alas, is now died, and I said that I was haunted by the idea of being a concentration camp victim. And he said, "No, you should be haunted by the idea of being a concentration camp guard.
No.
You might not have been let off that easy." And I thought about it straight away and realized she was right. She'd hit the moral problem. I was actually excusing myself. It was what you would do when the temptations are there to be a servant of the state, which is really what Brazil is about. The normality of Brazil implicates everybody.
And it's just, but it feels like that. I mean, when I deal with so many people now, they don't take responsibility for anything. Because career is important. All this, and nobody's thinking about what the implications are, what the knock-on effect is, because we're just dealing with the total immediate moment now and not thinking big picture anymore.
I just finished a book which deals with nothing else, and the thesis of the book is that morality and ethics and politics saturate art. It's not a question of them being separate. They saturate it so thoroughly that you can't see the join. You sometimes get the impression there is no political component of art. It has no other components. Everything is in it. And which is one of the things I think 12 Monkeys is about. But what is 12 Monkeys about? Come on, come clean. What is...
Nostalgia. It's really funny as the word nostalgia came to me. I mean, 12 Monkeys, I just thought it was an extraordinary script when I first read it. I said, there's no way this is going to get through the system. And
how did it? Because you and Willis both wanted to do it?
Yeah, I mean, I was approached because,
But you'd already actually made a standard in the sense that you made a Hollywood movie and brought it in on time, which was Fisher King.
Yeah.
So your reputation was back on
and
track.
And it was, been number one for 5 weeks. It made a lot of money. So
that's why they let you do.
I only talk about my success in terms of money, because that's the only thing they understand.
Yeah.
I can do successful films critically, but it doesn't mean anything. Money.
So you had the Fisher King under your belt, so they contemplated doing 12 Monkeys.
Yeah.
And of course, Willis wanted to do it, right?
Well, it came to me first, and I actually wanted Jeff Bridges to play the lead, but I couldn't. They wouldn't say yes to Jeff. And then they started offering up other names like Tom and more Toms. There must be somebody out there who is named Tom. And I said, I think I'll go away now. Thank you very much. And I walked away from it. And I got a call from my agent a few weeks later saying, Bruce Willis is interested. And I'd met him when we were actually doing Fisher King, and I liked him. I thought, there's things going on there that you hadn't seen yet. And so I would never have approached him, because were I to approach him, it puts me in the weak position. But he basically said, I would like to do it. So we met, and I said, I just don't want Bruce Willis superstar in this thing. I want you to come alone. You've got to be completely naked emotionally in every sense of the word. And you've got to cut out all that stuff, and we won't pay you as well. So
you've got to stop pouting.
It's like that, and once he said yes, it started moving forward. And that was critical. So it's very useful to have some people being really big stars, if they're willing to then take chances like Bruce did on 12 Monkeys.
Yeah, it's a terrible truth about star power. People often talk about Hannibal Lecter, and I enjoyed the second movie, but on the third, I said the one you should see is Manhunter. The reason why not many people saw Manhunter is that it didn't have a star in it.
Yeah.
Stars really do get the movie started, don't they?
It's
with the public, not just with getting it bankrolled, but with the public.
It seems to, but I mean, on the other hand, there's no guarantee. That's the other thing. I mean, look at
No, it won't necessarily make it work, but it really works without one. Yeah,
because there was this one. What was it? After 12 Monkeys, when it was all finished, done, successful, I was going to Warner Brothers. I'll name names here about the next project. And they were all effusively praising me for the success of 12 Monkeys. And I said, yeah, it's really nice to have a very intelligent, complicated script, some casting against type and blah, blah, all these things. He said, no, it's very simple. 2 words. I said, what? I said, it'll be Bruce Willis. No, Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt. Yeah.
So then they went and invested in Brad big time for about 4 films, none of them which worked. Yeah. And it was crazy because there was that one that he did with Harrison Ford. This had to work on every level, and it didn't. No. So you need them, but there's no guarantee, and that's the thing. But
you do occasionally see movies that you think, well, if that had a star in it, it'd be better. I saw one called Lone Star, actually, which was actually about race prejudice on the Mexican border. Nobody has ever seen this film, and nobody ever will, because by Hollywood standards, nobody's in it. I don't know how it got made. Yeah. And you often do need people on the marquee to bring them in.
But it's also about getting the studios to pump in money to promote it, which is a deadly thing. That's the killer. Yeah. They don't put if they don't.
They'll spend $100, but they won't spend the extra to.
Well, but now what they do
often because there's a change of regime, isn't it?
No, well, often sometimes, but they really need to pump in a lot of money, which is the thing that makes me crazy because Hollywood can pump in a lot of money, but European, British distributors don't have the money, so we are losing out because there are really good films floating around there that we don't get to see because we're not encouraged enough to go and see them.
Can you work on two sort of financial... I mean, once you get used to making a Hollywood movie with a big budget, it must be hard to think of pulling back to scraping and scratching. But can you also scrape and scratch and do the strange movie as well? I think you're trying to do that, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean,
you've got 2 careers going, really.
Well, no, even the Hollywood ones, strangely enough, we were scraping and scratching because, I mean, like Fisher King with Robin Williams, Jeff Bridges, Mercedes, blah, blah, $24 million. The one with Bruce, the one with Bruce and 12 Monkeys, Bruce and Brad, was $29 million. The average price of a film then when we were doing it was, I think, $37.
Yes.
So it's always been scrapping around the place. But no, I've always keep that in reserve. When I can't get the money to do the more expensive ones, I know I can always fall back on something.
And do a sort of Bergman television number, which is one of always been the great things about Europe, is the national director has usually had a place to retreat, although Renoir couldn't do it. I mean, Renoir in his last few years, he couldn't get a movie financed.
Fred Zinnemann couldn't. I bumped into him when he was in his 70s, and he was trying to do a thing on the Dybbuk. This is Fred Zinnemann who gave us all those films, and it was only going to cost $5 million. He couldn't get it. I mean, the problem with the business is really brutal. Respect is a very short.
But these are guys with solid, proven track records of doing viable projects, bringing them in on time, not wasting anybody's money, and they still can't get it. I understand why profligates run out of it. I think Wells was a great man who was also a profligate. I've seen his hotel bills, and I can prove it. You know, his idea of saving money was unreal. Yeah.
Michael Cimino's another one of those victims of profligacy.
I love all that. That's my favorite book about Hollywood. Is Heaven's the one about Heaven's Gate.
Yeah, that's great. It's when he puts the sprinklers in the property, which is his property. He doesn't tell anybody about that. Yeah. This is really absurd.
The first mistake is actually to buy the land, and second is he can't bear any part of the land looking wrong. And when Don Siegel and people like that were making movies, and they were shooting on the back lot, if there was a part of the back lot that didn't look right, they just pan down and look at the actor's feet, and then come up again with look right again, and get it all in one day. And
But there was. I mean, when did Fear and Loathing, that was really an attempt to revert, because again, Hollywood movie stars, $19 million this time. I keep going lower and lower, and it was interesting because it was me trying to pretend I'm a young filmmaker again.
Did it get its money back?
Yeah, I mean, because that's cheap. That's cheap, and it's money comes back from so many sources now, but it doesn't necessarily come back to us.
Yeah, I have heard that. It'll get its money back abroad, but you'll never see it.
It's like, okay, Fisher Gate cost $24 million to make. It was successful everywhere. It's 35 in the red, 35 million in the red. It's the most creative part of Hollywood is the accounting system.
I was talking to my mate Beresford told me that Breaker Morant broke even last week after a couple of decades, you know. But it didn't cost anything.
No, I know.
But they charged the distribution costs.
But it feeds that huge machine because all these costs are being put against the film, so it never gets back to the people who actually made it.
So you can't really tell us what you're working on at the moment, but Don Quixote still rides, doesn't it?
Yeah, I just was on the phone just moments ago with the insurance company trying to get my hands back on the script, which has been dragging on for the last year.
Yeah.
But I'll do it because it's such a foolish thing to do.
If I was following my instincts, I'd be trying to blackmail you now so that I could play the third peasant from the left. Yeah. Because I'd love to be in one of your movies. But I know a guy, a friend of mine, who once did that to Jacques Tati.
What?
He said, I want to be the third guy from the left on the railway station in Mononcle.
And?
It took 3 years of his life because Tati was always going back to that scene and calling this guy from wherever he was. He spent half his life traveling to the set. It was a huge error.
I think film sets are boring places. I mean, that's
there's a lot of waiting, but not for you. You're in charge.
No, that's why it's the only reason to be the director. Is it's the least boring job.
Well, when I was filming for television, that's when I did my reading. That's one thing I learned. And your downtime is when you're going to get educated. So take a book.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like when you're flying anywhere, take a good book in case the airport closes down. You've done so much, and you're really still getting started, aren't you?
That's what it feels
You're
like.
boiling with it, yeah.
No, I mean, I think that's the interesting thing about the fact that every project becomes almost impossible, trying to raise the money. It's each time I go to talk to Hollywood, it's as if I've never done anything. I mean, I have the same conversation. That's what's weird. The guys look different, their names are different, their clothes are different, but it's the same conversation. And it's about how, yes, we've loved all your stuff before, but this one isn't going to work. And it's stop. It happens every time. It makes me crazy. It makes me just want to. I do want to kill. Maybe that's what fuels me. This need to murder. But it's it never seems to end.
Sometimes they're right, but only when the director doesn't know what he's doing, and you know what you're doing. But I understand the reflex of the guys who are actually having to risk their jobs, and they're all going to get fired eventually. But they've got to be right, and no wonder they're cautious.
But what they do is cover their asses by making sure they don't have to make the decision. A smart producer comes in with all the stars, everything, all the money put together, everything. So the guys don't have to say yes or no. It's a done deal. They are the successful producers, and then the studio executives, when that thing bombs. It wasn't my fault.
Well, Selznick had a very bad reputation, which Graham Greene would go around talking about Third Man, saying Selznick looked at the script of Third Man, came to Vienna and said, I don't like the way Holly Martin stays in Vienna when he knows Harry Limes is dead. Why is he hanging around? Looks faggy. Can't you change Holly Martin to a woman, right? Graham Greene told this story. Right? What Graham Greene didn't say is it was Selznick who looked at the script and said, you haven't shown what Limes penicillin does. You've got to have a scene that shows it. And Reed, who was a smart cookie, thought, well, we'll do it with reaction shots, so you don't see the kid. You are in the audience, you're the kid. But it was Selznick who knew that scene had to be there. So sometimes the producer is right. Yeah. But those guys, those old Hollywood hands have vanished from the world, haven't they?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm actually working with a good producer, Chuck Roven, who produced 12 Monkeys. I mean, I like him enormously because he's got a good script sense. We fight all the time, and he makes me crazy. But I have to admit, his solution to the problem may not be right, but he spots the problem often, and it makes me then come up with a better solution than his, and it really works. I mean, I find constantly, whether I'm on the set or writing, it's always the same. I just keep making mistakes, and luckily there's a lot of nice people around me who keep helping me out of the corners I paint myself into.
Suppose you're looking at a movie and you think, well, if that had gone right, and so on. I think Münchhausen has things in it. There's a scene where there's a map and a ship, a sort of ghost ship turns and shows on the map. That's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in film. And something told me there would be hundreds of things like that in the picture. But
that shot is one of those. I remember when we shot it, my God, everything worked right. The light, everything we did. And it was one of those things where you can feel it, even without looking at the camera. So, gasp. It does something.
It's gorgeous. But what's wrong with Münchhausen? Do the battles run short of people? What do you see? I mean, you're the only one who knows that the money was missing.
No, I mean, the only thing that's wrong with it is that I cut it down to 2 hours rather than leaving it at 2:10. I mean, it's just, I conducted it too quickly. It is actually... I did a deal with the studio because we were in one of those awful situations where David Putnam had got the sack. He had started the project. I'm with Dawn Steele, and I'm trying to make it feel like it's her movie, not just David's movie and the past regime's movie. And we finally did a deal where if I cut it down to 2 hours, they would be behind it all the way. Well, I cut it down. They were my cuts. I mean, nobody forced me to do one thing or the other, but it just is that difference of, conducting a symphony a bit too fast, and it plays better slower. Anyway, I did the 2 hours. The only time I've ever really been political and trying to get something sorted out and doing a deal, and then they dumped it.
Yeah.
So that's why, never again. And that's what hurts. Not that I've made big mistakes in the film. It's just that by doing that, I just feel I was taken total advantage of, and it didn't make a blind bit of difference. And it would have been a better film just that.
Is it possible to work as a director in collaboration? You and Jones work together. Right?
Yeah.
Is it possible? You're about as close as two personalities could be.
Yeah, it got difficult. Well, Holy Grail was the first film either of us had done, and we both had the same vision. It was so clear, and all the prep was fantastic. Once we got shooting, things got different. But we resolved a way of doing it where I stayed back with the camera, and Terry dealt with the rest of the gang. But by the end of it, I went off and did Jabberwock about it, and I just felt, oh, this is great. I don't have to sit and discuss everything all the time. I really enjoyed it, and so I've stayed on my own subsequently.
Suppose the film form was disinvented tomorrow and you had to go back to pen and paper. You can't transfer everything you've done in film back to pen and paper. So much comes out of the actual stimulus of the movie gets rolling, and then things happen that you end up imagining them, but you wouldn't imagine them unless you had to. Right?
But that's it. That's kind of the enjoyable part, because if you've planned it so carefully, written it, it's so fixed in your head, it can get boring and mechanical. You end up like Hitchcock in his later days. He didn't even come on the set. He had storyboard, and the things are dead. But when you're out there and it starts going wrong, you've got to be a problem solver. And some of the solutions are brilliant because you don't have a choice.
Will you come back when you can tell me what you're doing next?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Terry.
Cheers.